Hello there. Welcome and thank you for joining us at Sleepy History, where we unfold the stories of the past in soft-spoken, detail-measured, mindful, and made to soothe. Whether you're gently settling in for the night, listening with one ear on your pillow, or letting the day's edges dissolve into something quieter, we are here with you, ready to guide you through a tapestry of ancient memories. If you enjoy these calm journeys through history stories told not with urgency, but with care, please consider liking this video, subscribing to our channel, and tapping the notification bell. These small gestures help our little corner of history grow, and they allow us to keep bringing you peaceful windows into distant eras. Take a moment now to let go. Breathe in slowly and let it all go on the exhale. Let your muscles soften, your thoughts slow. You are safe. You are still. The present will be here when you return. For now, you are free to drift across centuries, across dynasties, across one of the world's oldest civilizations. Tonight, we take a tranquil journey through ancient China, seen through the quiet lives of its builders and emperors, its mysteries and rituals. We will begin with the ordinary hands that carried the extraordinary burden of empire laborers on the Great Wall, bent under weight and dust. We will rise next into the palace shadows of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, whose obsession with control touched every brick and body across his domain. Then we'll walk through the hushed corridors of mystery surrounding the terracotta army and what lies still hidden beneath the earth. And finally, we'll step into the gilded quiet of the Forbidden City, where power whispered instead of shouted, and even emperors lived in isolation. But for now, come with us to the wind-chafed northern frontiers, where stones were stacked under a sun that showed no mercy, and where silence often said more than words. Before it was a monument, before it was admired and photographed, the Great Wall was a grueling task, a sentence, a burden, and for many, a grave. Let us begin. Imagine yourself on a dry northern slope of what is now Hebei province. Sometime in the 3rd century BCE, the earth underfoot is loose and red, crumbling into dust with every shuffle of your feet. The sky above is wide and pale, the sun hanging like a dull white eye, relentless in its watch. Around you stretch rows of men thin, sun-baked, silent. Their clothes are rough-spun, patched, and stained. Their tools are simple: baskets for dirt, worn wooden mallets, shovels with splintered handles. The air tastes of sweat and dust, and the only rhythm is that of labor, the soft thump of earth being tamped, the creak of baskets, the low commands of the foreman. You are one of thousands. Perhaps you were a farmer, taken during the off-season for what was called service to the empire. Perhaps you were a conscripted soldier, or perhaps a prisoner, sentenced not to death, but to something slower, more wearing. Some were taken for theft, others for dissent, some for simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. There were no choices. There was only departure and silence. Your village may have tried to resist, or it may have simply watched you go. There would be no compensation, no promise of return, only a name on a list, and then the walk to your assigned site. When you arrived, the wall was not a singular structure as we picture it today. It was a series of ramparts and barriers, strung across highlands and valleys, meant to guard the young Qin Empire's northern frontier. Under Emperor Qin Shi Huang, the various walls of former states were to be joined, extended, and made formidable. The method was basic but effective. Layers of dirt were shoveled into wooden frames, then tamped down with heavy weights in a process known as hangtu, or rammed earth. When packed correctly, the walls could withstand time and weather for centuries, but it required bodies, many bodies. Work began early and ended only with the loss of light. You might rise with numb fingers and a growling stomach. Breakfast was a thin millet porridge, watery and lukewarm. If you were lucky, a preserved vegetable. Rations were irregular, depending on distance and weather. Sometimes food never arrived at all. Malnutrition set in early. First the dizziness, then the hollow feeling in the limbs, the aching that never quite receded. And still the foreman's voice called for baskets to be filled, tamped, lifted again. You carried earth up steep ridges with your own shoulders. Sometimes the climb was so sharp that men fell, tumbling with baskets and stones. Accidents were common. There were no healers on site, no poultices, only a ditch where the bodies were buried, sometimes within the very walls they had helped to raise. It was said quietly and never when the overseer was near that the Great Wall was the world's longest cemetery. And perhaps it was. Escape was rare. Patrols were posted nearby and fugitives were hunted. Punishment for flight was death immediate and often made an example of. So you stayed, you bent, you lifted, you endured. The rhythm of your life narrowed to one beat. Shovel, pass, tamp, repeat. Days blurred into weeks. Months into seasons. You worked beside men who barely spoke, too tired for language, too cautious for friendship. Names were forgotten faster than faces. Faces vanished faster than stones were laid. Weather offered little mercy. In winter, frost stiffened your fingers until you could barely hold the shovel. In summer, heat shimmered off the ground in visible waves. Rain turned your workplace into sucking mud. Cold brought coughing. Heat brought fainting. All brought fatigue. The only relief was in brief sleep on packed dirt, under the open sky. Blankets were rare. Dreams rarer still. And yet the wall grew, section by section, tower by tower. A serpent of earth and effort. You might never see its full length, but you felt its weight in your bones. You might never see its full length, but you felt its weight in your bones. Occasionally, you glimpsed officials visiting on horseback, watching from a distance with unreadable faces. They didn't speak to you. They didn't need to. You were not a person to them. You were labor, a figure, a line in a tally. When an accident occurred, when a man collapsed from hunger or was caught stealing a crust of bread, the punishment was swift and silent. He was taken away. The line reformed, the rhythm resumed. Still, you found ways to endure. Some men sang low chants under their breath, songs of their villages, their mothers, the smell of steamed rice. Others carved small tokens out of stone amulets, lucky charms. One man tied bits of straw together in the shape of a crane and kept it in his sleeve, touching it before each morning's labor. No one spoke of hope, but small rituals endured. Legends grew around the wall. There's one story told in hushed tones during rest breaks of a woman named Mang Jiangnu. Her husband, newly married, was taken to build the wall and never returned. She journeyed alone to find him. When told of his death, her grief was so profound that she wept for days, her sorrow shaking the heavens. The wall itself collapsed at her feet, revealing the place where he lay buried. The story is not in any official record, but it has endured for over 2,000 years. Whether myth or memory, her tale captures something true, the sense that each stone was laid atop a life, that beneath every tower is 1,000 unmarked graves, that the wall, for all its strength, is also a monument to suffering. Eventually, your labor would end. For some, it ended in death, for others, in return. But even those who survived rarely returned the same. They walked differently, spoke less. Their hands were shaped by the weight of the wall. Their dreams carried the sound of tamping earth and the rustle of dry wind on stone. And yet, even here, there was a strange sort of legacy. The wall still stands. And while history remembers emperors, scholars, generals, it also remembers that countless unnamed hands made the impossible real. That the laborers forgotten, though, they may be left behind something enormous, something undeniable. A line that stretches across mountains and centuries. And now, gently, we leave the edge of the wall. Let the dust settle behind us. Let your feet rest. The ache in your shoulders can fade now. The rhythm of labor has quieted. As we move on from this long, hard journey, we ascend slightly into another world. Not one of calloused hands, but of grand decrees. Of obsessions and fear and silence in the court of a man who tried to live forever. Imagine a candle flickering in a jade-trimmed chamber, its flames still in the thick hush of a palace at night. Outside, the walls are tall and shadowed. Servants move like whispers across polished stone floors, heads bowed, voices barely audible. You are in the kingdom of Qin, one of many fractious states in the Warring States period of ancient China, a time not yet unified, where ambition, blood, and boundaries were constantly redrawn. It is into this world that a child is born, one whose destiny is written in iron and fear. Yingzeng was born in 259 BCE, the son of a noble named Yuren, who was a prince of Qin but held hostage in the rival state of Zhao. His mother, Lady Zhao, was a concubine of uncertain background. Rumors, soft but persistent, swirled around his birth. Some questioned his paternity, others whispered that his future would be marked by cruelty and fire. In a time when omens were red and turtle shells and eclipses, such whispers clung like smoke. But for now, he was simply a child, growing behind palace walls, watching shadows fall long and early. The world he inherited was not a peaceful one. The warring states were locked in perpetual struggle, each king seeking dominance over the others. Qin, located in the western regions, had begun a transformation into a militarized, centralized state. Legalist reforms by ministers like Shang Yang had created a strict, ordered society, emphasizing loyalty to the state over family or tradition. This would become the foundation upon which Yingzeng would build his empire, a world where control mattered more than kindness and uniformity more than comfort. Yuren, his father, eventually returned to Qin and ascended the throne as King Juangsheng. But his reign was brief. When Yingzeng was only 13, his father died, and with his death, the boy was crowned King of Qin. 13 years old, yet already sovereign over a kingdom forged in conquest and fear. Of course, real power at first belonged to his regent, Lebue, a cunning merchant and politician who had helped secure Yingzheng's rise. It is said that Lebue was deeply involved in palace intrigues and possibly even Yingzheng's true father, though such tales remained locked behind scrolls and suspicion. As a teenager, Yingzeng was sharp-eyed, quiet, and observant. He watched his ministers carefully, listened more than he spoke, and gradually began to assert his will. It was not long before he moved against Lebue. Whether driven by ambition or paranoia, Yingzeng exiled his former mentor. Another close associate, Lao Ai, rumored to be his mother's lover, was accused of treason and executed along with his entire clan. His mother was quietly removed from court life. Step by step, the boy king became an absolute ruler, shedding those who once controlled him. By the time he reached adulthood, King Zheng had grown into a tireless and methodical monarch. He rose early, worked late, and trusted few. He demanded constant reports, frequent audits, and absolute loyalty. His goal was simple in statement, vast in scale, the unification of all China under Qin rule. And so began the campaigns year after year against the other 6 states: Han, Zhao, Wei, Seiyachu, Yan, and Qi. Qin's military machine was efficient, brutal, and disciplined. Roads were built to move armies swiftly. Messages traveled on standardized scripts. Weights and measures were unified. Even the width of cart axles was regulated, so all roads could be used by all wagons. As victory followed victory, King Jing's control grew. He crushed the state of Han in 230 BCE, Zhao in 228 BCE, Wei in 225 BCE, and the powerful state of Sichu by 223 BCE. Yan and Qi fell soon after. By 221 BCE, for the first time in history, the lands that would become China were united under a single ruler. And King Zheng declared a new title, one no man had used before, Shi Huangdi, the first emperor. He did not wish to be merely a king, for kings had come and gone, rising like mist and fading as quickly. He would be more. He would be the beginning of an endless lineage of emperors, stretching forever forward like the Great Wall itself. His rule was no longer just political, it became cosmological. Heaven had given him the mandate, and he would secure it by any means necessary. Yet beneath the grandeur, a storm of paranoia gathered. The unification of China had not come without resistance. Local nobles resented the loss of their power. Scholars whispered discontent. Former generals plotted in silence. The emperor began to see enemies in every shadow, betrayal in every deviation from his law. He ordered vast purges, executed entire families, and built a network of officials to spy on one another. Dissent was not punished, it was erased. He abolished the old feudal nobility and replaced it with a system of commanderies districts governed by officials directly appointed by him. The nobility were forcibly relocated to the capital at Xianyang, where they could be watched, their lands absorbed into the state. The emperor's word was law literal and metaphorical. It was inscribed on bronze, carved into stone stelas, and read aloud across the provinces. All other ideas, particularly Confucian ideals of moral leadership and filial piety, were declared dangerous. Books were burned. Texts of poetry, philosophy, and history were gathered and destroyed, save for those deemed useful by the state. Scholars who protested were buried alive or vanished in the night. The world was to be made new, and the past, in all its diversity and contradiction, was to be erased. A single script, a single law, a single ruler. But power, once gained, is never quite enough. And for Qin Shi Huang, the greatest threat was not rebellion or rivals. It was time itself. He feared death, not just personally, but philosophically. How could an emperor who had reshaped the world be allowed to pass from it? How could the divine order of things permit such an end? And so began the long search for immortality. He sent envoys to distant lands in search of sages, magicians, and elixirs. Alchemists were summoned to court, their bubbling brews promising life eternal. Expeditions sailed east in search of the mythical islands of the immortals, said to lie beyond the sea. One man, Sufu, was sent with ships and hundreds of young men and women seeking paradise. He never returned. Meanwhile, the emperor consumed concoctions of mercury and jade, herbs and gold. He sought to purify his essence, to align himself with the 5 elements, to become more than flesh. But the very potions meant to prolong his life may have slowly poisoned it. His health began to falter. He suffered from bouts of illness, insomnia, and according to some accounts, strange hallucinations. He grew more isolated. He traveled constantly, staying in remote palaces built just for his use, far from the capital. His movements were kept secret, his court instructed to maintain the appearance of life even in death. Officials were known to disguise his passing on long journeys, riding in silence beside a sealed carriage while spreading the scent of salted fish to mask decay. The man who had unified China, who had built roads and laws and walls, spent his last years hunted by a fear he could not conquer. Death, the final dissenter, could not be silenced by decree. And yet his legacy remains. Even in paranoia, even in tyranny, there is something awe-inspiring in the breadth of his vision. A world reshaped not by dreamers, but by an obsessive will. His was a reign of iron and fire, but also of transformation, and perhaps of warning. In the next part of this segment, we will walk deeper into the echoes of that legacy, the strange, silent clay guardians that still stand watch beneath the earth. We'll explore the mysteries surrounding his burial, the vast unexcavated tomb, and the haunting enigma of the terracotta army. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Let your breath slow. The march of history continues, but gently, calmly, step by step. Let us now turn from the sunlight of empire to the darkness beneath it. The emperor who feared death more than any living man would go to extraordinary lengths to prepare for it. As his army subdued the last of the rival states and his bureaucracy carved standardization across a vast land, another project had begun quietly but with obsessive grandeur. Beneath a low hill near the city of Xianyan, a mausoleum was taking shape. It would not be a tomb in the traditional sense, but something far larger, far stranger, a subterranean kingdom, crafted for an emperor who hoped never to truly die. Work on the mausoleum began soon after Yingzheng ascended the throne as king of Qin. The historian Sima Qian, writing a century later, described a sprawling complex built by more than 700,000 laborers. Some were craftsmen, some prisoners, many conscripts drawn from across the empire. The construction continued quietly for decades, its progress obscured by distance and secrecy. Orders were given directly from the court. Shipments of rare materials, copper, gold, jade passed through hands silently. What emerged beneath that hill was not just a final resting place, but a statement of power meant to endure into eternity. It is said that rivers of mercury flowed through miniature mountains and seas, recreating the geography of the empire within a sealed chamber. The ceiling glittered with gems, arranged to mirror the constellations. Traps were rumored to line the corridors, mechanisms of crossbows that would fire upon intruders, poisons to protect sacred relics, puzzles of stone and bronze designed to confuse and mislead. Whether these stories are literal truths or poetic metaphors, they speak to the spirit of a ruler who saw no boundary between life and afterlife, law and legend. And then there were the Guardians. In 1974, farmers digging a well outside modern Xi'an struck hard clay. What they unearthed, slowly and without understanding at first, would become one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the 20th century: the Terracotta Army. Thousands of life-sized warriors, each distinct in face and form, arranged in precise formations, silently standing as if waiting for an unseen command. Horses, chariots, archers, infantry, all sculpted with stunning detail, buried in vast underground pits surrounding the tomb. Each figure was crafted with attention and reverence. No two faces are identical. Their hairstyles vary by rank. Their armor is true to form. Their hands, once grasping real weapons, now mostly rotted or removed, suggest readiness. They do not rest, they wait. Scholars believe these soldiers were meant to serve the emperor in the afterlife, to defend him from any threat, mortal or divine. It is a vision not of peace after death, but of vigilance, of control extended beyond the grave. And yet, the central tomb, the burial chamber of Qin Shi Huang himself, remains sealed. Chinese archaeologists have chosen not to excavate the mound directly, citing both technical limitations and a deep respect for what lies beneath. Instruments have detected unusually high levels of mercury in the soil, consistent with ancient records. Radar surveys suggest that large, intact chambers still wait below, untouched since they were sealed over 2,000 years ago. What might lie within? A throne of jade? A map of stars cast in gold? The writings of the emperor's own hand? Perhaps even his preserved body, resting in the cold heart of an imagined eternity. We cannot yet know. And so the hill remains closed, a mystery wrapped in soil and silence. Nature and history protect what man once buried. The emperor died in 210 BCE, while on one of his long tours of the empire. He was far from the capital. His death was concealed for weeks by his attendants, who feared unrest and disorder. They continued issuing commands in his name, feeding salted fish to disguise the odor of decay in the royal carriage. It was only once they returned to Shanyang that the truth was revealed. His youngest son, manipulated by a powerful eunuch named Xiao Gao, was installed as second emperor. But the Qin dynasty would not last long. In the absence of the first emperor's will and fearsome discipline, the system he built unraveled. Rebellions flared. Loyalties wavered. The legalist framework, so effective under a strong hand, became brittle under weak leadership. By 206 BCE, the dynasty had collapsed. The Han would rise next, and China would continue, but not as before. And yet, the legacy endured. The very idea of China as a unified entity began with him. The standardized script he mandated is the ancestor of modern Chinese writing. The road networks he laid would carry goods and armies for centuries. The name of the country, China, derives from Qin. His vision shaped geography, language, governance. But legacy, like stone, is shaped by erosion as much as design. For centuries, he was remembered with fear. Later dynasties distanced themselves from his severity. The Confucians portrayed him as a tyrant. His book burnings, his executions, his obsession with control all cast long shadows. And yet modern China has begun to re-examine his role. Monuments now bear his name. His mausoleum is a national treasure. There is recognition of both terror and achievement. A duality like the yin and yang of philosophy he once dismissed. If you listen closely, even now, there is something in the stillness of the terracotta army, a silence that suggests listening, as if time itself paused for breath. As if the emperor, in some way, is still waiting for what we do not know. Not peace, perhaps, but understanding. And as our journey with him comes to its quiet end, we look to what he left behind. Not only walls and warriors, but questions about ambition, legacy, and the cost of control. We leave the tomb now, its secrets intact. We step out into morning air. The mist curls above low hills, and in the distance, faint and pale, stands a soldier of clay, staring forever forward. When you are ready, let us move from myth and memory to mystery. In the next segment, we'll explore what we still don't to know about the terracotta army, the riddles of its construction, the untouched tombs, and the theories that whisper through time. For now, rest easy. The emperor's footsteps have faded. The guardians remain. To continue our gentle journey through ancient China, let us now turn our attention to a realm of mystery and majesty buried beneath the earth. Imagine yourself descending slowly into a quiet chamber beneath the loamy soil of Shanxi province. The air here is cool, faintly metallic, with the scent of damp clay and old secrets. Before you stretch rows upon rows of life-size warriors, silent, unmoving, eternal. This is the terracotta army, one of the most astonishing archaeological discoveries in human history, and still, even today, one of the least understood. It began, as many stories do in the annals of Chinese antiquity, with an accident. In 1974, a group of local farmers near the city of Xi'an were digging a well. What they struck was not water, but history, an outstretched clay arm, then fragments of armor, then the broken visage of a soldier whose eyes had not seen the light of day in more than 2,000 years. It was a quiet unveiling, and yet it opened a doorway into the lost world of Qin Shi Huang, China's first emperor. You may remember him from our earlier segment, obsessed with immortality, determined to control not only the living world, but the next. This subterranean army was meant to guard him in the afterlife. But as we look upon them now, with their finely wrought armor, individualized features, and rigid formation, the questions multiply. Who are the artisans who created them? How long did it take? What lies still hidden beneath the unexcavated earth? The terracotta army is more than a burial accessory. It is a city beneath the ground. 3 main pits have been excavated, but hundreds of chambers likely remain undisturbed. In Pit 1 alone, the largest of them, over 6,000 figures stand in tight. Military formation, archers, infantrymen, cavalry, charioteers. They are arranged as if in preparation for an imminent march, yet they will never move. The silence around them is thick, almost reverent. Look closely at their faces. No two are exactly alike. Some wear stern expressions, others seem almost wistful. Their hairstyles differ, some are top-knotted, some coiled, some shaved. Their armor reflects their role: heavy leather and bronze for frontline warriors, lighter garb for scouts and support personnel. The level of detail is breathtaking, and the effect, when you see them arrayed in rows, is both awe-inspiring and subtly unsettling. How were they made? The prevailing theory suggests a sophisticated assembly line process. Body parts, torsos, arms, heads were mass-produced from molds and then customized. Details like facial hair, wrinkles, or even slight asymmetries were added by hand, giving each warrior a lifelike uniqueness. Once assembled, they were painted in brilliant colors, deep reds, emerald greens, cobalt blues. But today, most of those pigments have flaked away, destroyed by sudden exposure to air and light. This is one of the great dilemmas of archaeology. Every discovery is also a form of destruction. As we reveal the past, we sometimes erase it. This is why large portions of the necropolis remain untouched. Chinese archaeologists, mindful of what happened to the painted warriors, have adopted a cautious approach. Better to wait until technology can preserve what we unearth, rather than lose it forever. There is much we still do not know about the army's construction. Estimates suggest that more than 700,000 laborers worked on the entire mausoleum complex, which spans nearly 38 square miles. That's larger than many ancient cities. And yet, the specific craftsmen who molded these soldiers remain nameless. There are no surviving blueprints, no carved signatures, no detailed contemporary accounts. The workforce likely included not only skilled artisans, but conscripted peasants and even prisoners, many of whom may have perished during the decades-long project. The weapons held by the terracotta army offer more clues. Many of the bronze swords, spears, and crossbows are still sharp today, thanks to a thin coating of chromium oxide, possibly an early form of anti-rust technology. Some suggest this points to a surprisingly advanced understanding of metallurgy. Others believe it may have been accidental. Either way, these weapons were real. They were not symbolic replicas. This was not a symbolic army. It was, in every sense, a military force prepared for war in the next world. And yet, for all the martial precision, there's art here too. The horses, for example, are beautifully rendered, with flaring nostrils, flowing manes, and expressive postures. The chariots, of which only a few fragments survive, would have been crafted from wood, bronze, and precious metals. Their elegance suggests that this was not merely a defensive army, but a ceremonial court as well. As you let this scene settle in your mind, the vast pits, the earthy silence, the unblinking eyes of stone soldiers, remember that this is just a fraction of what lies beneath. The central tomb of the emperor himself remains sealed. Local legends speak of traps crossbows that fire upon intrusion, mercury rivers that flow through miniature landscapes of bronze mountains. Scientific surveys have indeed detected unusually high levels of mercury in the soil, lending credence to the tales. But still, the tomb remains untouched, out of respect, out of caution, out of mystery. Now, let us continue our journey. The stars are high, the wind soft, and your thoughts may wander freely as we move deeper into the stillness surrounding the terracotta army and the mausoleum it guards. Beyond the known pits, beyond the orderly soldiers and fragments of bronze chariots, beyond even the rows of stables and storehouses thought to supply the emperor's afterlife, there lies the heart of the mystery, the central burial mound of Qin Shi Huang, a grassy hill, modest in appearance, but monumental in implication. It is believed to house one of the most elaborate tombs ever constructed, and yet no one has entered. Let's rest here a moment. Imagine yourself walking slowly around the base of the mound. The ground is quiet. Trees rustle above, birds chirp softly and fly off into the dusk. Beneath your feet, deep underground, lies a chamber long spoken of in whispers and legends. What lies within has fueled imaginations for generations. According to ancient texts, especially the records of the Grand Historian by Sima Km, the tomb was a marvel of engineering and cosmology. It is said to contain entire miniature palaces, rivers of flowing mercury, and ceilings inlaid with pearls to represent the constellations. The layout was intended to recreate the emperor's realm, with mountains, lakes, and administrative buildings, all rendered in exacting detail. Sima Qian wrote that the tomb was booby-trapped with automatic weapons designed to fire upon intruders. A claim that sounds like fantasy until we remember that the same complex gave us life-size armies, chemically preserved weapons, and advanced bronze metallurgy. Perhaps we should not be too quick to dismiss ancient accounts. Even without excavation, modern science has given us glimpses. Ground-penetrating radar and magnetic imaging have mapped out structures beneath the surface walls, chambers and voids, all pointing to the presence of something vast and complex. And the mercury? Soil samples taken near the tomb show concentrations far above normal. Whether these are natural or artificial remains debated, but the clues are enough to inspire caution. So why not open it? There are many answers, none of them entirely satisfying. The official reason is preservation. The moment the tomb is opened, delicate materials, silks, lacquers, pigments, even paper may begin to decay. And as with the painted warriors, any exposure to air could cause irreparable damage. But there is something else, something more intangible. A sense of reverence. A fear, perhaps. The tomb is not merely a historical artifact. It is a final resting place, designed by a man who believed, with absolute certainty, that he would live forever within its chambers. Disturbing such a place feels different from excavating a ruin. It feels like violating a promise. In Chinese culture, ancestral respect runs deep. The idea of disturbing a grave, particularly one as sacred and symbolic as this, is fraught with spiritual and ethical complexity. Many believe the tomb should remain untouched, that its secrets should stay hidden as the emperor intended. And so it remains sealed, a world beneath the world. Some scholars believe it may never be opened. Others think it should be, once preservation methods have advanced. But for now, it sleeps. Let us end this segment with a return to the surface. The sky above Shan is pale with morning light. The pits lie quiet. The soldiers still stand watchful, stoic, and eternal. They guard more than a tomb. They guard an idea that the past, no matter how deeply buried, never fully disappears. Perhaps that is the true power of the terracotta army, not in the mystery it presents, but in the feeling it leaves behind. A sense of something enduring, a silence that speaks. You may close your eyes now if you haven't already. Let your thoughts settle like the dust upon those ancient warriors. And remember, some mysteries do not need to be solved to be understood. They only need to be witnessed. Let us now leave the vast underground legions of the terracotta army behind and travel gently forward in time to the slow-burning candlelight and quiet grandeur of the Ming and Qing dynasties. Our path winds past silk banners and willow trees, moving toward the heart of Beijing, toward the Forbidden City. Imagine it. You are standing just before dawn on a polished stone walkway. The city beyond is still dark, muffled by the hush of morning fog. You pass through massive red gates, gilded with gold, and step inside a palace complex unlike any other on Earth. It is sprawling, symmetrical, and enclosed hidden from the gaze of outsiders. This is the Emperor's world, and if you are not among the select few permitted inside, it is a world you will never see. Built in the early 15th century during the Ming Dynasty, the Forbidden City was not merely an architectural marvel, it was a living embodiment of celestial order. Nearly 1,000 buildings, arranged with ritual precision, form a rectangle over 180 acres. Every tile, wall, and courtyard had meaning. The layout echoed the cosmic harmony of Confucian principles and the bureaucratic order of the imperial state. Let us wander deeper. The paving stones beneath your feet are worn smooth by centuries of footsteps of ministers, eunuchs, servants, and concubines, but the air remains still. Sound is muffled here, even in the bustle of activity. Life within the Forbidden City was shaped not by noise and motion, but by structure, repetition, and ritual. The emperor, known as the Son of Heaven, rose each day long before the sun. His schedule was rigid and unrelenting. He bathed, dressed, and offered incense in solemn silence. Court sessions began at dawn. Ministers lined in rows, offered petitions and reports in hushed tones. The emperor listened, occasionally speaking, often not. Every movement, every breath, even was constrained by etiquette honed over centuries. This was not a place of spontaneity. It was a place of shadows and ceremony. Yet beneath this formality, human lives played out in quiet complexity. Eunuchs, for instance, served as the invisible machinery of the court. Castrated at a young age, often voluntarily, often not, they were permitted to live and work within the inner palaces. They controlled access to the emperor, managed records, supervised kitchens, and sometimes wielded extraordinary political power. Their loyalty was often rewarded. Their treachery, when discovered, was punished without pity. Concubines, too, lived lives of intricate isolation. Selected from across the empire, they entered the Forbidden City not as lovers, but as symbols of dynastic legitimacy. Most would never speak to the emperor. They lived in luxurious seclusion, their days filled with embroidery, music, reading, and long hours of solitude. Rumors swirled within the palace walls of favor gained or lost, of subtle rivalries, of alliances whispered in the dark. Even the emperor himself was not free. He lived at the center of a gilded cage, his life choreographed by tradition. He could not walk unaccompanied. He could not dress without assistance. He could not weep in public, nor laugh too loudly, nor sneeze without someone recording it in the palace annals. Every gesture mattered. Every silence was heavy with meaning. And yet, despite the rigidity, there was art here, beauty, stillness. The imperial gardens were carefully landscaped to reflect the changing seasons. The Hall of Supreme Harmony, the largest building in the complex, shimmered with golden roof tiles and intricate dragons curling along its eaves. Inside, vast lacquered beams loomed above thrones draped in yellow silk, the color of the emperor alone. Music echoed through these halls, slow and ceremonial. The zither's notes fell like raindrops on marble. Incense perfumed the air. Time moved differently here, measured in tea ceremonies, equinoxes, and the slow passing of generations. Let your thoughts drift there. Let the rhythm of their lives, so unlike our own, lull you into stillness. Now let us pass through another gate, one fewer in number than those who lived here, yet never unlocked by many. With each step, the hush of history surrounds us more tightly. We have entered the inner court of the Forbidden City, the heart within the heart, where the imperial family once resided and where daily life moved not in shouts or declarations, but in careful steps, soft whispers, and the rustle of silk. It is here that the emperor was not just ruler, but husband, father, and sometimes prisoner. His world, though vast in appearance, was tightly confined. He lived, worked, ate, and slept within this walled sanctuary. Even his gardens, though spacious, were enclosed. Visitors were few, conversations were formal, friendships rare. Everything the emperor did was watched, documented, preserved in scrolls and annals for eternity. Imagine the pressure of that gaze, the constant weight of expectation pressing in from all sides. But let us consider the empress. Her life was equally constrained, though in different ways. Chosen for her virtue, lineage, and poise, She lived at the top of the female hierarchy, yet she too served a role. Her duty was to represent the ideal of womanhood dignified, obedient, poised, and fruitful. She rarely saw her husband. She interacted more often with concubines, eunuchs, and ladies-in-waiting, navigating a courtly world rich with symbolism but sparse in true companionship. Each day for her began before dawn, with ceremonial tasks offerings at ancestral shrines, attendance at palace rituals, supervision of silk embroidery workshops. In many cases, the empress was responsible for guiding the younger women of the court, including the concubines, some of whom arrived as young as 12 or 13. These girls were trained not only in etiquette and the arts, but in how to survive the palace's quiet power games. Though we think of the Forbidden City as a place of grandeur, for those who lived there, it could be a place of aching loneliness. Letters were rare, visitors from the outside world rarer still. Few left once they entered. Years passed in a kind of suspended animation, broken only by palace festivals, birthdays, or the occasional dramatic shift in fortune, a concubine gaining favor, a eunuch falling from grace, an empress dying in childbirth. Outside the inner court and the outer court, daily life unfolded with its own rhythm. Ministers arrived for court at the break of day, lining the courtyards in perfect order, their ranks signified by embroidered beasts on their robes, cranes for civil officials, tigers for military men. Reports were presented, edicts proclaimed, memorials read aloud, yet the emperor's voice was rarely heard. Often, he simply nodded or wrote his commands in silence. The walls around them loomed tall and imposing, painted in imperial red, roofed in yellow glazed tile. Each color, each pattern, each statue of a lion or dragon bore meaning. Even the number of beams in a hall or the placement of a screen behind a throne had symbolic purpose. Over time, some emperors grew weary of the rigid order. They retreated into poetry, painting, calligraphy. The Forbidden City held thousands of artworks, scrolls, and fans, jade carvings, and porcelain bowls of exquisite delicacy. Culture flourished, but always within bounds. Art was not merely for pleasure. It was for virtue, for refinement, for the glory of the dynasty. Imagine now a quiet evening. A soft breeze stirs the willows in the imperial garden. The lotus ponds ripple. The last notes of a bamboo flute fade into silence. Somewhere in the palace, a candle is being snuffed out. A concubine, half asleep, curls beneath a silk coverlet. A eunuch bows before an altar. The emperor sits alone in his study, reading a scroll illuminated by lamplight. His eyes are tired, his robe heavy, the night endless. Such was the rhythm of life in the Forbidden City, bound by duty, softened by ritual, shaped by the slow current of tradition. As you settle your thoughts and let this world drift gently through your imagination, remember, in this vast enclosed world, every life mattered. Every silence was filled with meaning. Every gesture, however small, was part of something larger, an empire, a legacy, a dream of perfect order. Let your breath slow. Let your mind settle. We will soon bring our journey to a close. As we gently conclude this quiet journey through the corridors, tombs, and philosophies of ancient China, let us imagine ourselves in a quiet garden at night. The stars above are pale and unblinking, and a full moon rises over the tiled rooftops of a long-forgotten palace. The air is cool. A bamboo grove rustles faintly nearby, and the soft murmur of water comes from a stream that flows over smooth stones. Here, in this tranquil place, let us sit and reflect together on all that we have seen. History is not merely a sequence of events or a ledger of kings and battles. It is a rhythm, a breath. It is the lingering scent of incense in a scholar's study, the hollow clang of a bronze bell in the distance, the soft brush of silk slippers across stone. It is the idea that those who came before us, emperors and farmers, poets and generals, concubines and craftsmen, are not gone, but sleeping. waiting for their stories to be remembered again. Our journey began with the earliest origins of Chinese civilization, along the banks of the Yellow River, where legends like the Yellow Emperor and the sage kings Yao, Shun, and Yu reside. Whether myth or memory, these figures laid the foundations of what would become one of the longest continuous civilizations in human history. We traced the growth of early dynasties, the Shi, Shang, and Zhou, and saw how bronze vessels and oracle bones weren't just artifacts, but voices. They told us of ancestral worship, divination, and a society bound by reverence for the unseen world. Then we stepped into the minds of the philosophers, Confucius, Laozi, Mozi, and Zhuangzi. Each offered a different vision of how to live, how to govern, and how to harmonize with the Tao, the Way. Their thoughts, penned on bamboo slips more than 2 millennia ago, still ripple through Chinese society today. These were not abstract musings, but living guides shaping empires, villages, and the daily rituals of ordinary people. We then walked into the tomb of Qin Shi Huang and stood among his silent army. The terracotta warriors reminded us of the deep yearning for immortality, for legacy, and for protection beyond the veil of death. The unexcavated tomb of the emperor, still sealed and sleeping beneath the earth, speaks to us not only of ambition, but of mystery. It reminds us that some questions must remain unanswered. That part of honoring the past is letting it rest in silence. And then we passed through the gates of the Forbidden City. We strolled down the moonlit corridors of an imperial complex that was both prison and paradise. We observed the delicate lives of eunuchs and concubines, of empresses balancing poise with power, and of emperors carrying the weight of heaven upon their shoulders. We saw how ritual governed everything, from the rising of the sun to the smallest bite of a meal. And through it all, we heard the silence enforced, respected, endured. The Forbidden City was not merely a political center, but a living metaphor for the Chinese conception of order, hierarchy, and celestial harmony. But what do all these fragments add up to? What does ancient China mean, not just as history, but as something to carry with us? It means resilience. A civilization that has risen, fractured, and reformed over and over again for more than 4,000 years is not simply enduring, it is adaptive. The invasions by nomadic tribes, the internal rebellions, the loss and rediscovery of cultural treasures, the rise and fall of dynasties, from all of these, China emerged not as a singular story, but as a tapestry. And each thread is essential. It means duality. In ancient China, opposites are never enemies. Yin and yang do not compete, they complete. Confucian order coexisted with Taoist flow. The quest for power coexisted with poems about plum blossoms. A general could be a calligrapher, a concubine, a poet, a eunuch, a strategist. This duality creates a worldview that is comfortable with paradox, with balance, with embracing the complexity of human life. It means continuity. A bamboo flute played today in a quiet garden in Suzhou is not very different from one played 2,000 years ago. The calligraphy hanging on a tea house wall still carries the brushstrokes of Tang and Song scholars. The reverence for ancestors, the offerings of rice wine at tombs, the stories told during the Mid-Autumn Festival, these are not reenactments. They are living memories, and it means humility. The more we study the past, the more we realize how little we truly know. The names of emperors may survive, but the thoughts of the farmers who tilled their fields often do not. The warriors of the terracotta army have faces, but no names. The artisans who carved dragons into jade, and the women who embroidered robes for the court, they left their marks, but not their voices. Perhaps that is why, as we conclude this meditative journey, we are drawn not to the grandeur of ancient China, but to its silences, the pause in a poem, the hush of a palace hall before court is convened, the stillness of a tomb beneath the earth. These silences are not empty, They are full of meaning, of memory, of mystery. They ask us to slow down, to listen, to respect. And so, dear listener, wherever you are in bed, at peace, eyes half closed or already drifting into sleep, know that the world we've just visited is not lost. It waits in scrolls, in stones, in starlight, and in the stories we choose to tell. The moon still rises over Chang'an. The wind still whispers across the Great Wall. The river still flows beneath the bridges of Hangzhou. And somewhere, a single lantern flickers in the darkness, keeping vigil for those who came before. Good night. And may your dreams carry you gently through the corridors of time.